I'm not dumb except when it comes to women. I know. Really aren't most men dumb when it comes to women? I know some of us think they know about them, that they understand them, but do they really? I think not. Like most men, I just try to muddle through and do things as nearly right as I can. Having said that, I believe that is the reason it took me so long to realize I am really dumb when it comes to women and specifically to my wife. I had seen the signs of her disrespect and cheating for nearly 5 months before I decided that if there was smoke there might just be a fire I needed to put out. As the old song went, we got married in a fever hotter than a pepper sprout. I found, wooed, and married Catherine over the course of 1 year in college. I was attending Oklahoma State University at Stillwater majoring in partying when she stumbled into my life. My real major was in hotel and restaurant management. The partying was what I did when I should have been studying. I was also working at Eskimo Joe's, a well-known and popular college hangout, as a bouncer. The bouncers rotated through different stations in the building to do their job. We served at the doors to verify IDs and wandered through the crowd to be sure nothing untoward occurred. There was an upstairs in the bar, and one of us was always stationed near the head of the stairs to keep the drunks from falling down them. I got a quick education on the females of the species while I worked there. I learned which ones would, and which ones wouldn't, and which ones would some of the time, and how to identify each of them. When I manned the post at the head of the stairs, I could overlook much of the lower floor. I watched as the women worked the dumb bastards on the main floor below from my post on the balcony. Some of the women had 2 or 3 of the poor dumb bastards buying them drinks at the same time in hopes of taking them home or to their cars for a little nookie later in the evening. Many of the young ladies would cadge drinks from the dumb men until just before closing time, usually at the last call or slightly before there would be a large exodus of these women. They would use the pretense of going to the restroom before leaving with the young man who had treated them for the evening to allow them to dart out the back door that opened off the hallway to the restrooms. This, of course, pissed off the men, and many times they had to be counseled by one of the bouncers to calm them down. I knew which of the young women routinely played this game, and as a public service I would warn my friends, or sometimes just a guy I thought was nice and didn't deserve getting shit on about them. Others I just let get taken. Anyway, one Saturday evening after a home game, I was working and watching the drunks make fools of themselves when this absolute goddess stumbled into my arms. Drunk was an understatement for her. She was totally blotto and claimed to not even know where she was. She couldn't find the friends she had supposedly came with, but I understood that. I had never seen her with those women before, and they were one of the worst groups to duck out the back door after drinking free for the entire night. I was pretty sure they were gone. It was after the last call, and they normally darted out when the last call was announced. About that time, with Catherine literally draped in my arms, the man she had been cadging drinks from came up. He glared at me and grabbed her by the arm. "Come on, Callie," he said. "We need to get out of here. I was beginning to think you had disappeared on me." Well, now I knew her name, I thought. I was about to let her go with the young man when she roused somewhat and looked at him with a questioning look on her face. "My name's not Callie, it's Catherine." "Who are you? Why do I have to go with you? Where are Cindy and the other girls?" I was supposed to go with them when the bar closed. The man just pulled on her arm and said, "Callie, Catherine, whatever. I have been buying you drinks all night long and you're coming home with me now." Catherine roused herself once more and tried to stand and jerk away from the man. She looked scared and said, "No, I don't know you and I don't want to go with you. Now leave me alone." The man tried to pull her away once more and she resisted. I decided she really didn't know him and didn't want to go, so I pulled her toward a chair and tried to get between them. "Whoa there, dude," I said. "It looks like the lady doesn't want to go with you. Now why don't you just move along like she asked before we have trouble?" A mask of hatred came over his face and he pushed me. "Back off, asshole. The bitch is with me and we're leaving. Now let it drop if you know what's good for you." I moved back a little, then grabbed his arm and locked it behind his back with a quick twist. He yelled out in pain as one of my fellow bouncers came up. "You have a problem here, Dave." "Nah. The dude here wanted to take the lady with him, but she didn't want to go. He didn't want to take no for an answer, but I think he understands now, don't you?" When I said that, I pulled upward on the butthead's arm a little more, and he yelped in pain once again and rose onto his tiptoes. "Oh yeah, I got it. Just let me go, asshole." I walked the man to the door and out to the sidewalk's edge. I gave him a little push and said, "Okay, beat it, bub. We got your picture now, so don't want to have any more trouble from you, or we'll have to call in security next time." I walked back into the building to see a couple of the waitresses clustered around Catherine. She had passed out in the chair. Damn, now what? I wondered. Patty looked at me and said, Dave, Catherine lives in my dorm. If you'll help me get her back to the dorm and into her room, I can take care of her from there. Well, that's what I did, and that is how I became one of Catherine's favorite people. The next weekend I was working Friday night when the beautiful woman bounced up to me, threw her arms around me, and hugged me before she put a very sloppy and long kiss on my lips. I pushed her back and said, "Oh, what's that all about?" "You saved me last Saturday. Patty told me you kept that asshole from taking me home, then you drove us back to the dorm and helped her get me into my room. I don't know what would have happened to me if you hadn't saved me. I didn't even know him, and my asshole friends did the old drink and dash out the back door at last call trick without me. I was supposed to go with them, but they didn't wait for me, they just took off. I never even heard them call last call, so I missed it. Well, for the next 2 years when I was working, Catherine was always near me for protection. We got to know each other very well and began dating a few months after I saved her. When we graduated, we got married. Catherine is just a little high maintenance. She likes to party and dance, and she likes to eat good food and drink fine wine. That's okay. We have great jobs and no children, so we can afford it. We just can't afford as much as she wants right now, and that pisses her off when I tell her we can't go out until after payday. Several of our arguments about money revolve around the fact my parents are pretty well off. They own a large farm store and almost 4 sections of farmland in our hometown. We have a large year-round fishing and hunting resort on the land also. When I tell Catherine we can't afford something, she almost always yells that if I wasn't such an idiot, I would get it from my parents. She thinks I should go back home and take a management job from Dad so we can make big bucks and be the big ducks in the little puddle. I have told her repeatedly that I am here in this job to gain some real-world experience and learn how the big boys do it before I return to our company. The resort manager plans to retire in 3 more years, and I will be taking over his job at that time. That isn't fast enough for Catherine. I began getting snide comments about my ability to earn enough to pay our bills. Occasionally, Catherine would go out after work with her friends and come back home smashed. Many times over the last several months, I had to pick her up or pay for a cab. About 5 months ago, all that stopped. Oh, she still came home blitzed, and many times I had to go to her office with her the next day to pick up her car. Sometimes I had to take her to her favorite bar to pick it up, but I never had to pay off the cab or pick her up. A time or two, I found her sleeping on the living room floor when I came down the next morning. I wondered how she got into the house if she passed out on the floor inside the door. Finally, after several arguments, I decided to find out what was really going on. I did what many men do in such a situation. I bought recorders and placed them in Catherine's purse, car, and even one in her office hidden under her desk. I had our landline tapped and bought the necessary gear to copy her cell phone calls. What I found out killed my love for her. She had become sexually involved with one of the men she worked with. Many of the late nights and the shopping trips on Saturday with the girls over the last 5 months had been her liaisons with good old Gregory Anders. He was one of those obnoxious salesmen you hate. Greg was arrogant, had a smarmy smile, and was a suck-up to his betters. His one saving grace, well, perhaps not, was not only was he the highest-paid salesman in her company, but his father owned the damn place. I had enough recordings to understand 2 things. When I had cut down on our visits to high-priced dining establishments and cut down on entertaining and buying fine wines and going to expensive plays and so forth, Catherine complained long and loudly at work about how I mistreated her. Gregory picked up on her unhappiness and began following the women on their nights out. He flashed his money, bought them drinks, and generally showed them the good life until he had Catherine's interest. From there, he managed to get her to meet him for lunch at expensive bistros. After she was hooked on his high-spending ways, he invited her to evening meals after work at posh places. After a few weeks of this, Catherine had succumbed to his seduction and began spending time in bed with Gregory. He began giving her orders, and to my shock, she obeyed them. All he had to do was threaten to cut off his largesse, and she knuckled under to his demands. BJ in the car? Sure, honey. Intimacy in the restaurant bathroom? Okay, whatever you want, honey. I even had recordings of him telling her to cut down on the intimacy we had because he didn't want my sloppy seconds. He told her she had to make sure more than 24 hours went by from the time she screwed me until she did him, or he would drop her. He said, "I refuse to have intimacy with my woman after she's been with some loser. I don't care how you do it, but you make sure you're clean before you come to me." Our intimate life rapidly began to decline and revolved around good old Gregory's sales trips out of town and on Sundays. He was never with her on a Sunday, so that rapidly became my only guaranteed day of loving. I have to admit I really didn't care much after I found out what was going on. I had only kept the cheating wife around as long as I had because I was preparing for the divorce. Thankfully, we had only been married about 27 months, and there were no kids yet when I found out about good old Greg and Kate. She hates to be called Kate, so that is how I think of her now. We were renting a pretty nice condo and buying 2 new vehicles. She, of course, had to have a BMW. I was really happy with my 2010 F-150 Super Crew 4x4. I bought a new one when we got out of college. When we went out, she refused to ride in that damn old truck and insisted we drive her car. Of course, we don't go out together much now. I just do enough with her to keep her in the dark. Today begins my revenge on Kate and Greg. She has a date with him for tonight. She plans to meet him at the mall at 6:30 p.m. They are going for drinks, then to a new French restaurant for supper. Afterward, they are going dancing. She told me she was going out with the girls to a baby shower. Kate came out of the shower at 5:30 and began dressing. She was ready to leave at 6. That would just give her enough time to get to the mall and meet Greg. I waited in the hallway beside our bedroom door until she started out. I came bustling in and wrapped her in my arms. I gave her a kiss and began rubbing her. "Damn it, Dave, stop. You know I have to meet the girls at 6:30. I don't have time for this, and besides, you'll muss my makeup." "I'm sorry, honey. I just need you so badly. How about a quickie now, then a nice long screw when you get home?" "No, I don't have time, Dave," she replied. I pushed her back until her feet touched the edge of the bed. I already knew she was wearing thigh-high stockings and bikini panties. When her feet touched the bed, she fell back and I moved on top of her. It was a quick intimacy and I came straight inside her. Damn, I'm going to miss this. I kissed her and pulled away. She was yelling about how I had messed up her makeup and how I had made her dirty now. She started for the bathroom to clean up, but I grabbed her and pulled her to the door and down the hallway. When we passed the table, she kept her purse on. I picked it up and handed it to her. "I'm sorry I took so long, honey," I said. "I really needed that, though. Thank you. Here is your purse. If you hurry, you can still make it, and not be too late. Tell the girls I said hi. You can blame me for making you late. Tell them I apologize. But I need to clean up. I can't go to town like this," she replied. "No, you're fine, honey. Hell, this won't be the first time you've run around town all evening like this. We used to do it all the time, remember? No one will ever know. Now go on and have fun, babe." Catherine glared at me and turned toward her car. It was all I could do not to laugh. I sat up waiting on the recording so I could see what asshole thought of getting a dirty wife that night. Oh man, was he pissed at Kate. I heard them kissing and moaning when they went into his condo. There were a lot of rustling sounds, then I heard Kate say, "Greg, honey, I'm sorry, but Dave made me make love to him before I left. Let me go and clean up before we go to bed." What? I told you not to let that little guy near my thing when I was going to be in it. I heard a slap and Kate screamed. "Now get into the bathroom and clean up. I better not find any stuff in there when you're done. And you can forget about getting eaten before we do our thing." I couldn't hear much else because Kate had apparently left her purse in the living room and they mingled in the bedroom, but I was happy inside. I had pissed old Greggy off and from the sound of it maybe gotten Kate slapped. I hadn't seen a bruise, so I assumed he had just slapped her. The next 2 times I knew Kate was going to be with Greg, I forced her to screw me. In fact, every time she went out from home, I tried to leave a load in her, in case she was really going to see Greg, instead of doing whatever innocent thing I had been told she was going to do. Greg was getting more and more angry because Kate kept coming to him dirty. He called her a cheating wife and other horrible names, almost every time she was crying before he took her roughly. It was so cool. I messed with her and she left home crying from fear of Greg, then he was mean to her and yelled at her and she cried more. As far as I know, he didn't hit her again after that first time, and I suspect that had only been a slap on the back. Although the last time she was with Greg, she felt bad. I had enough to do and decided that my revenge was over. I set it up to serve her with divorce papers during her Saturday date. I even provided Greg's wife with copies of the notes and photographs I had. No, I didn't have any pictures of them getting dirty, just pictures of them having lunch, dancing, and kissing in his car. It was bad enough. Once or twice Kate stuck out her breasts and spread her legs. I had 2 pictures of her sucking while he was driving the car. I paid extra to have Kate served after she and Greg got to his condo in the city. Actually, it was a condo leased by his father's company for company visitors. Greg and his father both used it for their liaisons with women to whom they were not married. Oh yes, I was also kind enough to send Greg's mother pictures of his father and his secretary fooling around too. Heck, why not be a nice guy? The process server met Greg and Kate in the lobby of the condo. After he served her, he gave Greg a letter I had prepared for him. The process server said to Greg, "I have been instructed to give you this letter, Mr. Anders. Mr. Stevens has outlined his actions for you, so you know what has been going on the last few months and what you can expect when you get home next." In the letter, I explained the documentation I had against him and Kate, and that I had furnished it to his mother and his wife. I also asked him if he liked getting my leavings from Kate. I told him I had made sure that every time she came to him, I sent some of me for him to play in. I'm afraid Greg became so angry he hit Kate. He managed to hit her twice before the security guard grabbed him and pulled him away. I heard this and I heard the guard call for the police and an ambulance for Kate. I felt bad. Yes, I wanted to hurt Kate, but I didn't want her physically injured. I just didn't know Greg would actually try to beat her. About an hour later, I got a call from the hospital. They wanted me to come down and complete some paperwork and bring Kate home. I laughed and said, "Sorry, Ma Am, I can't do that. Kate and I are getting a divorce and she doesn't live with me. Why don't you call her lover and have him pick her up?" "Oh, well, I suppose I can do that." "What is his name?" they asked. I told her Greg's name and phone number. She was quiet for a moment, then she said, "Sir, I'm sorry, but I can't call Mr. Anders. Your wife is in the emergency room because Mr. Anders beat her badly this evening. I believe he is in jail now, sir." "Okay, here are 2 more phone numbers. Maybe one of them can help." I gave the phone numbers of Kate's parents and one of her 2 best friends. I don't know who picked her up. I never heard from her for nearly 4 days. Wednesday evening, I left work and found Kate waiting by my truck. When she saw me, she got slowly out of her car and approached me. Kate had tears in her eyes when she stopped in front of me. "David, honey," she said, "can we please talk about things?" "Please." "No, Kate. Not much to talk about. You cheated and I caught you. Now we're getting a divorce." Enough said. "But I don't want a divorce, Dave. Can't we get over this? I don't have anywhere to go. Please, I need to come home, Dave. I promise I'll be better if you just let me come home and make it up to you." "Nope, not gonna happen, babe. I hear Greggy had to move into your little love nest. Why don't you move in with him and his daddy? I bet they would be glad to take care of you." I walked around Kate and got into my truck. When I closed the door, she was standing there crying. She hadn't moved before I drove out of sight of her. Now comes another thing I didn't understand about women. Kate was working full-time and made almost $36,000 a year. Why didn't she have enough to rent a place like I had? Why did she move into that damn condo with Greg and his father? I don't know. What I did get from the police report is that Greg and his father beat her so badly she died after 3 days in the hospital. She had apparently angered them when she refused to let them DP her. She thought she was Greg's lover and they would marry after the divorce, according to the statement she gave the police before she died. Now I really feel like shit. Kate killed our marriage searching for the good life. I killed Kate with my silly-assed revenge. I looked up and said, "Bartender, gimme another one." Gotta forget this shit. I was floating and the world was spinning, then a damn mule kicked me in the head. There were dozens of people standing over me. I was looking up the short skirt of a goddess. She was looking down at me. Her face showed shock, and she dropped to her knees beside me. "David, is that really you? What the hell are you doing so drunk you fall off your bar stool?" Patty: "Yes, Dave. I'd ask how you've been, but I don't think you're in any condition to tell me. Come on, let's get you up and see if we can sober you up some." Patty and one of the bouncers helped me to her booth. She fed me coffee. I ran to the restroom twice to get rid of the coffee and most of my guts. God, I'm glad I don't have to clean up after me. After a couple of hours, I was at least able to talk without much problem. Patty demanded to know what I was doing there so drunk. I told her the whole story you have just listened to and said, "So you see, Patty, I killed her. I don't know what I'm going to do now. I hated her for what she did to me, but I didn't want her dead." Patty sat there in shock. She stared at me with her mouth open. Finally, she wrapped her arm around me and gave me a good hug. "Dave, some of what you did was pretty despicable, but you didn't kill her. That asshole Greg killed her. You couldn't know he'd do that." Patty sat staring into the distance for a moment, then said, "You know, Dave, some of this is my fault too. I'm sorry now I never told you about Catherine while we were in college. Even after you were dating, she had an eye for the guys. If they had a lot of money or just a little and were willing to spend it on her, she would lead them on. A lot of the nights she didn't spend time with you at Joe's, she was out with some guy with deep pockets. How do you think she came up with the money for some of those expensive clothes she wore? I never told you because you weren't exclusive then, and I really didn't think you would fall for her line of bull and marry her. Hell, you worked at Joe's and knew what kind of tramps worked the floor there. I thought you were just after her for her body like the other guys. So you see, I'm guilty too, in a way. I sat looking at Patty. Even at college? Shit, I just don't understand women. I thought we had a good thing going. Dave, don't paint all women with the same brush. A lot of us aren't like that, you know. If you use those criteria, I suppose I should run from you because all men are like Gregory, right? Dave, I know that isn't true. I worked with you for 2 years. I know what kind of man you are. How many women did you take home and put to bed when they were so drunk they could have gotten raped if someone hadn't taken care of them? Dave, you just need to learn women are like men. There are some good, honorable ones out there and some that aren't. There are women players like there are men. Look for the good ones and do the best you can. We reason differently than men, it's true, and we think with our emotions more, but that's not so hard to understand, is it? Patty smiled and tugged at my arm. Come on, Dave. Let me get you home. Where do you live, by the way? If you're really interested in learning something about women when this all settles down, I'll give you some lessons on understanding them. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I hate giving a backstory, but I realize some of it is necessary to tell the story I want to tell. What I look like, what Stephanie looks like, that isn't important. Use your imagination to fill in those blanks with yourself and the love of your life. Stephanie and I found each other mutually attractive. What happened was not based on looks. It's a story about love. I'm married to Stephanie. Others called her Steph, but I never did. I found that name beautiful. She also called me Robert, even though everybody else called me just plain Bob. Our pet names for each other were our formal names. This part becomes important later. My hobby is astronomy. I like looking at the stars, as well as the planets in our solar system. I have an assortment of telescopes. Some people have a lot of guns, some people have a lot of vinyl records, and I have every telescope I ever bought. I get the new ones just like anyone who likes the latest version of things gets the newest one. If you'd have asked me a few months ago if anything was wrong in our marriage, I would have told you, fuck yeah. Something had seemed off recently. Stephanie and I had been married for 3 years. We were discussing the right time to have kids. We had a wondrous moment when we both decided it was time. For 2 months it was all we talked about. And then, she suddenly didn't want to talk about it. Our sex life, which had been frantic with the excitement of baby making, didn't go back to what it had been before. It became more of a ritual. It wasn't cold. It seemed to be mutually satisfying, but the intensity wasn't there. Then 3 weeks ago, the intimacy just stopped. I assumed it was because of female problems I could never understand, or the fact she was having second thoughts. Both of my theories were wrong. I returned after work at my usual time. Nothing really tipped me off for what was to follow. There was no strange car in the driveway. There was a strange one parked on the street, but I didn't realize that part until later. I walked in to see my wife and a man I'd never seen before on our couch. I would normally refer to it as the couch, but what I saw is the reason I describe it differently. They were sitting together holding hands. This was unusual. Stephanie usually let me know whenever someone was dropping in. I was hoping this was some distant relative I'd never met. "Hi, honey, is someone joining us for dinner tonight?" Stephanie said, "Robert, please take a seat. I've got something to tell you." I took a seat in the chair across from the couch. This was weird, but I wasn't assuming it was the one thing it looked like. Not until Stephanie spoke again. "Nigel and I have fallen in love." Well, that removed all doubt. I was silent for a moment, processing this. While I was doing that, she looked over at the strange man. She was looking at him in the way she used to look at me. He was looking at her the same way. There was no doubt she was telling the truth. I had just one question, so I asked it. "Who the fuck is Nigel?" The person who I assumed was Nigel spoke. "I am. I know this is awkward for both of you. I'm just here to ease the pain of this disclosure. This is painful for her. Obviously, easing the pain meant only Stephanie's pain. My pain wasn't eased at all, so that didn't exactly help. Stephanie spoke next. I met Nigel at work. I didn't mean for it to happen, it just happened. I really thought I was calm when I said, "How does something like this just happen?" Nigel asserted himself and said loudly, "Don't raise your voice to her. She is an angel." Stephanie stared deeply into his eyes and said, "Thank you, Pookie. I'm here for you always, Pocahontas," she replied. I was stunned. It was like having a concussion. I used to play rugby, so I used that word from experience. What I was feeling was the equivalent of a knee to the head. I was completely disoriented. My next words reflected that. I once again kept my emotions suppressed and said in a conversational tone, "Maybe there is a way we could work this out. I've read stories about women who can be in love with two people at once. There's this romantic story where a woman is in love with two men. We should read that together before any rash decisions are made." Nigel jumped off the couch. "Quit yelling at her. Stop torturing this wonderful woman." Stephanie grabbed his hand and pulled him back to the couch. "Thank you for defending me, my knight." Then she kissed him. A small peck on the lips that would have previously meant nothing. Then she looked at me with a mixture of compassion and sadness. "I can't love two men. That's not for me. I can only give my heart to one person at a time. I fell out of love with you as I fell into love with Nigel. Can't we talk about this?" "We could go into counseling," I replied. Nigel was clutching her hand when she responded. It would just drag out the pain. "Robert, my heart knows what it wants. I still have love for you and I always will. I just don't love you the same way anymore. A clean break will be the easiest for both of us. But we were planning on having kids just a few months ago. I don't understand." Stephanie looked at me with all the compassion in the world. "That's why I have to do this. I want children to be conceived in love." Nigel spoke again. "They'll be our love babies." "Oh, Pookie," she replied. Then they gave each other an Eskimo kiss. I really didn't think they could have done something more nauseating if they had tried. I was about to speak when Stephanie looked over at me and spoke first. "Robert, I know this is hard, and thank you for being so supportive during what I know was a painful moment for you. I'll be back later to pick up my things, and I really hope we can talk as friends." I was still wondering how my calm demeanor somehow was interpreted as supportive while they both got up and left. I certainly wasn't supporting any of this. I guess they had said what they had come to say, and I was an afterthought. Nigel got into his car and she got into hers. It was the practical thing to do, of course, since she needed to take her car. Still, I don't think I could have handled seeing them leave in the same car together. I've always considered myself blessed with a very good memory. That night it felt more like a curse. I was replaying everything Stephanie had said to me over the last 6 months. I'd never heard of Nigel. I had no idea who he was. She had fallen in love with someone else and had an affair, and I never had the slightest clue. How had I missed it? There certainly had been the signs I mentioned earlier that something wasn't right. Now I could put those things in context. She'd fallen out of love with me. That explained the changing sex. She'd cut me off completely the last 3 weeks. I concluded that was around the time she and Nigel had consummated their mutual desire. She had said she could have only one love at a time. That was when she likely gave her heart and body to him. I was still trying to process everything when I got the call from the hospital. Stephanie had been in another car accident. Yes, another. Stephanie always had a lead foot. A year ago, she'd rear-ended someone on her way back from work when traffic had come to a sudden stop. She was physically fine. She was emotionally shaken up. She'd lost consciousness when the airbag deployed. She wasn't even hospitalized for that one. This one was more serious. She was taken to the hospital because she was unconscious when she was discovered by the EMT. I was told she'd run a red light at full speed, then swerved to avoid an oncoming car. She'd wound up driving into the side of a Jack-in-the-Box. That information had come from Nigel, apparently. He certainly didn't phone me and disclose that. I got that information from the staff. I was still processing everything when Nigel approached me. Yeah, he was there too. He'd gotten there before me, but I hadn't seen him until then. He didn't express mutual grief or offer what would have been an unwelcome hug. He didn't say anything like, "Hey," or "Let's talk." He just went to what was on his mind. "Bob, I can't see her since I'm not family. You know she was leaving you for me, so I'd appreciate it if you let me in. You have to approve it. I'm technically not family, but I am her family." Technically. Given that approach, I gave my response. It was easy. No. If I was you, I'd let her go. I'd be looking to move on. "Let me comfort her," he answered. "No," I answered. Are you really going to be an asshole at a time like this? Yes, I replied. With that, I turned my back on him and walked toward Stephanie's room. He was definitely right, I was being an asshole. I didn't feel bad about it at all, not even a little bit. I barely had time to deal with the hurt when Stephanie announced she was leaving. I hadn't even had time to get to the anger stage. After seeing Nigel and listening to him, grief was turning to anger now. I couldn't very well lash out at my wife after she'd been in an accident, so being an asshole toward Nigel would do nicely for the moment. I needed answers, and I hoped I'd get them. Until I did, Pookie was not getting anywhere near her. The fact that he felt pain was a bit of a balm to me at that moment. I was intercepted by Dr. Beller. He looked the part of the wise and experienced doctor. His gray hair gave me comfort that he was a fountain of knowledge. He told me my wife likely had amnesia from what he was able to tell. Otherwise, she was physically fine, just like the last traffic accident. Mentally, though, this one was different. Outside of soap operas, I had no idea what that really meant. What I learned from television was I should whack her on the head again to bring her memories back. I soon learned that soap operas shouldn't be treated as medically accurate. Dr. Beller was very doctor-like in dumbing it down for me. She has retrograde amnesia. I didn't know there were different types. There's also a version called anterograde amnesia. People who have that can't make new memories. Have you ever seen a movie called 50 First Dates? I have. It's actually a criminally underrated Adam Sandler movie, I replied. All Adam Sandler movies are underrated. We'll have to agree to disagree on that. No point in pissing him off, he was her doctor after all. So if she doesn't have that kind, what kind does my wife have, I asked. She has the kind more people have some familiarity with. She can't remember anything after a certain point. She will still make new memories. Is it permanent, I asked. It rarely is. Usually memories do return. It's extremely rare that they never do. How long does it take for them to return, I asked. It varies. It could happen this week. It could take a year. It could take longer. So at any moment she could just suddenly remember everything, I asked. That's a possibility. It could also happen that she begins to remember certain things but not everything. She gradually remembers more and more things. So what you're saying is, you really have no idea what's going to happen, I asked. That's what I'm saying. Also, you should give the Waterboy another chance. Adam Sandler is a comedic genius. I will. Apparently anybody can become a doctor these days. So much for putting faith in gray hair. I was let in to see my wife. She was awake and alert, as well as confused. Robert. What happened? The doctors tell me only I was in an accident. I grabbed her outstretched hand and she gave mine a squeeze. I squeezed back. What's the last thing you remember? I was coming home from the office. The car in front of me had stopped, but I didn't hit the brakes in time. Her memories seemed to go back to the accident a year ago before this. This was pre-Nigel, from what I'd gathered. It was also interesting to me that her memories returned to the other accident. Had she suffered some serious injury then as well that the doctors hadn't detected? Or was this a coincidence? These were thoughts to discuss with the doctors another time. Or not. Right now I was in the moment. Stephanie, you got into another accident the day you left me. I left you. Why would I ever do that? She replied. You told me you were in love with Nigel. Nigel? Who the fuck is Nigel? She answered. He's someone you know from work. I don't know anybody from work named Nigel, she replied. That was interesting. Either Nigel was new there or she had lied to me about how they met. Look, I don't want to agitate you. We can talk about this another time. You can't just drop a bomb like that and not talk about it. My first thought was, that's exactly what you did to me, you harlot. There was no point in saying that or walking out to spite her for something that she didn't remember. I took the high road. Barely. I told her the story the same way I'd heard it from her. She interrupted several times and came close to accusing me of lying. She couldn't seem to wrap her head around anything I was saying. Once again, that's exactly how I'd felt when she and Nigel declared their mutual love to me earlier that day. She was filled with questions I couldn't answer, like, were you cheating on me? No, Stephanie, I never have and never would, I replied. Did you beat me or something? Same answer as last time, I replied. Then why would I do this without any reason? I kissed her hand. Stephanie, just recover. We have time to talk about this. I'm glad you're okay. Stephanie was kept in the hospital for a few days while the doctors ran tests. I was there every day after work. So was Nigel. Every time I walked in, he would say something like, Bob, can we talk? No, I replied. Bob, you know that. No, I replied. Stephanie eventually was cleared to come back home. Both of us were briefed about what to expect. Stephanie was fine both mentally and physically. Her memories were likely to come back, possibly slowly, possibly all at once. I'd heard it before. She'd heard it before. At this point, Stephanie just wanted to go home. I wanted that too. So we nodded and agreed and signed forms without reading them, just to get the fuck out of there. As we were nodding and signing, Dr. Beller mentioned she could go to work, but her lack of memory could make it difficult. He suggested she might want to take a different job in a similar field. I simply said, "Thank you, Dr. Beller, for all you've done. We want to go home now." 5 minutes later, we did just that. We slept comfortably in each other's arms that night. I didn't want to let go of her. It was like having a piece ripped out of me that had suddenly been restored. I never wanted to lose it again. I slept more soundly since this whole thing started. When I awakened, we were still intertwined. While I did breathe easier when I had my beloved safe and secure under our roof once again, it doesn't mean I was completely at ease. From what Dr. Beller had said, this situation could change at any time. I wasn't sure how big a window I had to come up with a permanent solution, but I had a second chance here and had no intention of just wasting it by doing nothing while the clock ran out. There were deep philosophical issues to consider, of course. Things like, if Stephanie could fall out of love with me so quickly once, did I really want her back? Things like, should I look a gift horse in the mouth? I've never really been into philosophy, so I ignored those thoughts and concentrated on the task in front of me. I needed Nigel out of the picture before I could figure out anything else. That problem was difficult enough. Stephanie wouldn't consider leaving her job. She loved her job. She was also good at it. She'd called her boss and explained the situation with her memory. Her boss was sympathetic and welcomed her back. She told her she'd make it work. I was supportive of her returning, however. I still knew nothing about Nigel. A lot of affairs start at work. From the little I knew, so had this one. This was definitely going to be an issue if he really was someone she worked with. If Nigel was a coworker, she'd run into him again. If he was, there was the possibility he'd worm his way into her heart again. She did go back to work despite my reservations. It seemed she had been honest with me about how they met. Nigel was indeed a coworker. Stephanie told me she got a nice welcome back reception. Everyone seemed to want to do everything they could do to assist her. They had all been informed of her memory loss. Only one person had made her feel uncomfortable: Nigel. His way of welcoming her back was different. He kept wanting to talk to her alone and kept breaking physical boundaries she was not comfortable with from a coworker, much less a stranger. She had gotten plenty of hugs, but Nigel was the only one that sniffed her hair. Stephanie told me she drew boundaries very quickly. He didn't seem to have gotten the memo. He kept wanting to hold her hand or put his arm around her. All this did was piss Stephanie off. The company where she worked didn't have any kind of non-fraternization policy for coworkers. Fortunately for me, it did have a strict sexual harassment policy. I realize I did say, fortunately for me, I still wasn't ready to think. Fortunately for us, not yet. Nigel got summoned into a meeting by Human Resources and was given the usual company lecture about the policy and told he needed to cease and desist. He also got reprimanded by his supervisor and told he needed to cease and desist. Nigel neither ceased nor desisted. The first thing he did after his dressing down was to confront Stephanie in full view of a lot of witnesses. Instead of talking, he grabbed her and started kissing her. I assumed he'd been expecting muscle memory or something to result in her kissing him back, rather than the slap that followed and the kick to the groin. Nigel was fired for cause. That didn't end him trying to see her. He showed up in the parking lot at work. He showed up if she left to go to lunch. It got so bad she got a restraining order against him. This did a lot to alleviate my concern that the affair might be rekindled. It's hard to have sex from 500 feet away. I did enjoy seeing my wife's paramour suffer. I also enjoyed resuming the relationship with my wife I thought we'd always had. Stephanie was back for the moment, but I knew that could change if her memories returned. Even if they didn't, would something in her nature cause her to suddenly feel the same way about another man? One night I was looking at the stars on the balcony with one of my older telescopes. I did that from time to time because I liked thinking of myself as Galileo and wanting to see if I could see what he saw. I could not have drawn the conclusions that he'd drawn, but I wanted to be able to. When I got frustrated, I pointed the telescope at the neighborhood, as I have often done. Damned if I didn't see Nigel in the bushes. Stephanie came out on the balcony and asked what I was looking at. I just told her to look into the telescope. Whoa, that is some serious creeper shit. Should I call the cops? Oh no. He wants something to watch. Let's give him something to watch. What do you mean? I want him to see me make love to you. I want him to know you're mine. He'll see you and I naked. You told me he already has. No, just you. I don't think he's ever seen me naked. Then it's time he did my hunk. I want him to see what he can never hope to compete against. Let's let him see something from me he will never get or see again. Let's show him two people in a love that can't ever be equaled. Talk about pressure. It should have been difficult for me. It wasn't. Her enthusiasm was contagious. Hell, it was hot. It had been years since our foreplay had been that intense. We kissed, petted each other lovingly, then kissed again and again. At this point, I had no idea if Nigel was still watching. I hoped he was. I also didn't care. We both were in the moment, enjoying the touches and tastes of each other in a way we hadn't done in years. We started slowly, both of us knowing we were being watched. Soft touches with our mouths and fingertips. Soft murmurs of approval. Nigel screamed. Nuhu. We should have our babies. Our babies. Apparently, that was the straw that broke the camel's back for Nigel. He chose that moment to burst from concealment. Pocahontas, please stop. I love you. At that point, we were no longer paying attention. I wanted nothing more at that moment than to have an orgasm. By the look on her face, she wanted the same. I can always tell when she's in the moment. She never looks at me. Her eyes go everywhere else but looking at me. Nigel, realizing his words were barely heard, decided to make a non-verbal statement with action. That statement was made by crashing through our glass door. He really could have just pulled the door open. It wasn't locked. I supposed he wanted to waste no time finding out. I like to think we both came when we heard the glass shatter. I think we both came at the same time. I didn't even bother to get dressed and raced downstairs. Despite what we see in the movies, it seems that throwing your body full force into a pane of glass doesn't leave you unmarked. Based on the screams, it seems it's also painful. Nigel was one hell of a mess. He was halfway in and halfway out, struggling to extricate himself from the glass. I grabbed his hand and yanked him in. He screamed again. His clothing was ripped and his exposed flesh had lacerations all over. Rather than thanking me, he yelled, "Get your hands off me." I wasn't even touching him after I pulled him in while he lay prostrate on the floor. He really seemed unappreciative of the fact he was bleeding and making stains. The area was tiled, but it still would have to be cleaned up. I called 911. At that time, I thought it was a medical emergency. Nigel looked like he'd lost a fight with a chainsaw. After the conversation with the 911 operator, though, I did realize that I was also reporting a crime. I also lived in a city where reporting a crime could result in the person reporting the crime being arrested or shot. Let's just call that city Baltimore. This was one of those situations where I might have been handcuffed and spent a night in a cell because the police just arrested everybody on the scene and let the judicial system sort it out. 2 policemen arrived. One was a fairly large and impressive guy. The other was a smaller woman that gave me the feeling you wouldn't want to fuck with her. While both Nigel and I were told to get down and stay down, Nigel once again tipped the scale in my favor. While we were both in the process of being cuffed, he yelled out to Stephanie, Pocahontas, "I'll be back to save you." The larger cop was Officer Whitecloud. That's all he and his partner needed to hear. I did hope he'd be promoted someday so that he'd eventually be Chief Whitecloud. As the dust settled, the court decided that Nigel had violated a restraining order. He'd also been guilty of breaking and entering on top of that. Nigel was going to be out of our lives for a while. It didn't hurt when Officer Whitecloud took the stand that he mentioned Pocahontas in front of the most liberal judge who could have presided over the case. Did I mention the judge was also a woman who hated stalking? I wanted to kiss her at that moment, but didn't want to push my luck. Nigel went to jail. Oh, not forever. He got a sentence of 2 years and served 3 months. That was still an unexpectedly harsh sentence. He was now a felon. That would put a crimp in his future. He finally seemed to have gotten the message because there was no further communication from Pookie. That was one problem out of the way. There was still the ticking time bomb of her memories returning. I selfishly didn't want that to happen. Given how she now thought about Nigel, I don't think that would have been good for her either. Still, we had to go toward the future prepared for it. I had no doubt if it ever happened we'd be together. I also had no doubt it would be a complication we didn't need. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.